Hey, what is up, everyone? So, Season 18 of Sea of Thieves has officially been delayed to December, at least for now. Maybe it'll get delayed again, we're not sure yet. This is something that I was not too surprised to see. However, I do think it's very, very funny to me that they released this video and this announcement on October 31st, which is Halloween, or at least here in the United States, that's what we celebrate on October 31st. So it's almost like we asked Rare trick or treat, and instead of giving us a treat where they give us like an actual Halloween event like we used to get in the past, they decided to give us a trick and say, hey, the next big content update, yeah, we're delaying that. Now, as funny as I thought that was on the day that it happened on last Friday, I was also not surprised at all to see this change. Usually, you can pretty much tell if a season is going to get delayed for Sea of Thieves if Insiders hasn't really gotten much to test. And for the Insider program, there really has not been much added for the Season 18 content. And honestly, the sad part about all of this, I don't really care that much. I kind of heard this news and I just kind of was whatever. I wasn't even really that disappointed with Season 18 being delayed. And I think the main reason is because, as we talked about before, not much of Season 18 I'm that excited for. I don't think it's really the Devil's Roar update that I was really hoping we would get. And really the only thing that I was looking forward to is in the final month of the season. So we weren't even going to get it when Season 18 released. The only disappointing part about that now is that that's getting pushed back even further. I think it's also funny though when you think about that Rare has not been able to go a year without having a major delay for a Sea of Thieves season. It's happened every year for the last like 4 years, I think. I think the first major delay that we saw with the season was I think season 7, and then it happened again with season 10, and then it happened again last year with season 14. But yeah, I'm not too surprised to see this, but it does get me thinking about something that I've talked about before, which people don't really like to hear when I say it, but Sea of Thieves is competing for people's attention, and I think they're failing at that competition. Let's look at another game that I think is getting a lot of attention right now, which is Fortnite. Now, I talked about this a few weeks ago in one of my other videos, where we talked about how Fortnite was doing a huge thing for Halloween with their Fortnite Muse event. It was probably one of the biggest and best ones they had. I think I liked last year's Fortnite Mirrors a little bit better than this year, but they definitely put in a ton of effort for it this year. You compare that to Sea of Thieves, where every year they kept getting worse and worse with their Halloween events, to this year where they just didn't even do anything really. They had double gold and XP, but that's like nothing. That's just something that they do each season anyways. And the real problem with all this is you can't really win on the competition side of things in terms of keeping players engaged with your game. I think for November, I'll probably mostly be playing Fortnite and Lego Fortnite. I'm really excited for at the end of November, Lego Fortnite's supposed to be getting their next really big update with like Ninjago and everything. So I'm definitely gonna be playing that, and I'm assuming I guess season 18, if things stay on track with the current plan, it should be released in like 2 weeks after that. But who knows if I'll even really be playing much of the new season when it actually does release, because I'll be focused on Lego Fortnite and trying to play through all that. So something I did want to talk about a little bit in this video is you'll see a lot of comments reacting to this news saying that the problem is the season system and that Rare needs to get away from that season system. And I actually feel like I have a different opinion on that. I don't think the season system is the problem. If you think about it, the new season system that we have is basically just the monthly updates that we used to have in the past, but just packaged in a season format. Now, maybe you could say that the packaging is the problem, but I also don't think it would work. Because one of the things that I thought about when this announcement was made last week was that maybe if we didn't have the season system, they could have potentially moved something up that was a little bit more ready to go and release and move that up sooner. But the problem with Sea of Thieves is, unlike other games, Sea of Thieves really has everything tied into the lore, so stuff has to be basically built on top of each other. So you can't take stuff that might have been added in, say, Season 19 or maybe towards the end of Season 18 and add it now and then wait for the stuff that was not ready yet and push that off later. You can't like shuffle it around because of the lore implications of everything. So in my opinion, just because of how they release content into the game, going to a monthly update structure wouldn't really work. And I also think the reason people like the monthly update structure compared to season system is because back in the day, the monthly updates were far better. But I don't think that has anything to do with, whether the updates are monthly releases or if they're seasonal releases. Really, the problem is Rare is not taking the time to make content that players actually like. And something that I think is interesting is we also recently just got the announcement of what the results were for the Season 16 survey. So if you remember a few months ago, we took this whole big survey. If I can find the video, I'll link it here, where you can see me going through the survey and my thoughts on everything. But we got the results of what everyone said about that, and Season 16 only got a 6.1 overall rating for players, which Rare thinks that's a good result. I think that's failing, basically. If we were in school and we were giving Rare a letter grade for each of these seasons, Season 16 from the player base would have gotten a D. It's not even a C, and a C would have been better. A C would have been at least passing. A D is failing, but for some reason, Rare thinks this was a good result. And there's a lot of, like, fluff in this posting about, like, that they actually were doing great with this and how Season 16 was actually really good, despite people, not being the biggest fans of everything and a lot of the results not coming out too great. But something that I did want to kind of talk about is when I say that Rare is not focusing on updates that really are engaging people, let's look at what they actually got from this survey, where they asked people what were they most interested in seeing in terms of future content updates. And I don't even know if I necessarily agree with these rankings for like what the priorities should be, but number one, new world regions and locations. The last new world region we got was, I would say, Season 4 with the Sunken Kingdom. I would count that as a new region, even though some people might not count that in the traditional sense. But that's something that a lot of players want. And now, I've talked about in the past how they could do a new world region without, expanding the map too much or making it so that the game couldn't handle it or something like that. So I think it's totally possible to do this in the current Sea of Thieves, even within the current engine and the current technical limitations and all that stuff. Now, that also says new locations, which you could count stuff like the skeleton camps that we got last year. I think that would count. And just, new changes to islands. Even like the Smuggler's Hideouts, you could technically count as new locations. I think that's a little bit too vague. They need to be a little bit more specific what they say or what they mean when they say locations. But that's the number one priority that players have, is this new world regions and locations. The second is more narrative content. So I think that could mean Tall Tales, but I think it could also mean what we've been seeing a little bit with some of the Smugglers League and stuff, as we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago with the secret reveal that happened with the final update of Season 17. And I'm actually a fan of that. I would hope that we get more stuff like that. I don't necessarily need more Tall Tales in the game, but I do think that the narrative side of the game has been a little bit lacking since Adventures disappeared from the game. And I think they are starting to get that back on track, so I think we're at least getting this second priority, which is good. The third one is new ship types, which personally I've never really cared to get new ship types in the game. Maybe some people would want configurations, and I think I'd be okay with that. Maybe you could give certain reformatting of the same type of different ships that we have. So for example, maybe have 3 types of sloops that you could choose from. Maybe one has a powerful front cannon and no cannons on the sides or something like that, or you have just different ways that you could handle it. I don't necessarily think I would want that. I feel like that would overcomplicate the game, and what I really want is just more things to do. I don't think changing the ships would really change that much up for me personally. And I feel like with stuff like the Cannon of Rage and other tools that they've added into the game, you can get kind of around what the new ship types could be. Other things I hear about with new ship types usually from players is that they want a 6-person ship or stuff like that, and I also don't want that. I feel like people are already complaining about solo slooping and stuff when they say that, going up against a galleon is already too hard. So what do people want? 6 people on a ship. That's not going to make anything better. And that would also take up more resources into the server, so you're just going to have less ships in the server as a whole because you have these 1 or 2 giant ships. So personally, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I know that's something that people have talked about. And then the fourth place we have is new world events, which, I'm okay with new world events, but I feel like I am a little bit more in favor of something that's the rotating thing, kind of what they just did with the Season 17 Act 2 event, where we had the Royal Crest Fortress event happening and all that stuff. I would be more a fan of stuff like that, where we have world events that kind of cycle throughout the year, and they're more act like seasonal world events rather than always present, because one of the problems I think we have right now is there's almost too many world events going on in the game, and you include the raid voyages and stuff, and it just makes it so that people aren't really caring about world events as a whole. And I think people that vote for saying that they want new world events, I feel like are trying to get back to that original feeling when if you saw a Skeleton Fort active, or if you saw Canasham Winds or something, or a Fort of Fortune, everyone like went to it and it was like really engaging and it was like these intense battles, kind of like what we're having right now with the Reaper Forts. But I feel like either you have to prioritize like what the reward that you get from that is, which right now you get the mega stashes, which makes it so everyone really wants to get it, or you have to make the gameplay more engaging. And I just feel like I don't trust Rare to be able to do either of those that well. I feel like with the Reaper Forts, which is the latest ward event that we got added into the game, I don't think the gameplay on its own is enough to keep people interested. And I think after they get rid of the mega stashes at the end of Season 17, we probably are going to see that dramatically decreasing the amount of people that actually are going and doing these forts. I will say though, I didn't mention at the beginning of the video, but the mega stashes are actually staying until December, which I'm actually really happy about because I've been trying to use it to catch up on my Chest of Fortune combinations. So that actually made me kind of happy about the delay for Season 18. And then this fifth one is new sandbox tools and mechanics, which could be good, but the thing that I think is the biggest problem with this, and that Rare has done better in the past with, is that last year you saw this. We got a bunch of new tools, like we got the Raid Voyage mechanic and the diving mechanic and stuff for Season 11. Season 12 and Season 14 were very heavily focused on adding a bunch of new tools like the grapple gun, the throwing knives, the bone collar, all that stuff. And I actually like a lot of those things, like the bone collar I think is really fun and things like that. But there was nothing new to do with all those different tools. It was just doing the same stuff that we've always done. And I think if you look at updates from the past, like say the Heart of Fire update, which added a new tall tale, it added a new voyage for Athena's Fortune, which that desperately was needed back then because Athena's Fortune's voyage was pretty awful. So the Run of Thieves Haven was very needed. And then you also got the Chain Shot and the Blunder Bomb added in that update. And I'm pretty sure there was some new types of Athena's treasure. I think the Run of Thieves Haven introduced some new treasure types that weren't introduced in the past. So that update, that was just one monthly update, but I think it focused on a lot of things that people were wanting. It added new sandbox tools and mechanics. It added more narrative content in the form of the Heart of Fire Tall Tale. You could kind of say it's like a new world event because I think when people talk about world events, they want something that like will bring people together. And at the time of the Run of Thieves Haven, even though it was just a voyage, since it was always in the same spot, everyone knew to like kind of go over there. So I feel like, you know, just that one monthly update covered a good amount of what people were asking for with this list. And I think if you look at recent Sea of Thieves seasons over the last couple years, they haven't really been doing that as well. They'll like hyper focus on one thing, but not focus on other stuff. So I just kind of wanted to go over the survey results a little bit because I just thought it was interesting and I wanted to talk about some of the feedback that people had on it. And I'd be interested to hear what y'all think in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on the Season 18 delay, and what do you think about these results that players are saying that they want from Sea of Thieves? I'd love to hear all of y'all's thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you have to like and subscribe. And real quick, I want to just plug the video from Saturday, because I think that's probably my favorite video I've made all year. It's a gameplay video, basically going in and having some very interesting, funny moments with other players as we teach them what the word thieves in Sea of Thieves actually means. So I think that's a fun video to go check out if you haven't already. But that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.